Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. For any of you who have been listening to the show for some time now, you know full well my love and affinity for cultivating cannabis organically and consciously. One of my absolute favorite aspects of this passion is the individuals I meet who are in alignment with cultivating in this way. The reason for this is not simply due to the fact that we can agree on our values and expand each other's knowledge pertaining to cultivation techniques, but is instead due to the notion that if someone is passionate about cultivating in this way, that they are undoubtedly someone who has done a fair amount of inner work and has a deep connection to themselves and the world at large, especially with regards to nature. Today's guest on the show is a man who, when I first met, we immediately hit it off for the aforementioned reasons, among many others. He is the founder of the Klickitat Medical Cannabis Resource Center in the Columbia River Gorge, in which he supplies education and resources pertaining to cannabis, and is also the owner and lead grower behind Tacon Farm, in which he is focused on producing microbatch, organic, regeneratively grown hemp products to his customers and patients. In today's episode, we will be diving into his background in psychedelic medicines and what role they have played in him doing the work he is doing today, his views around the current themes in the cannabis industry, and what he feels may be being lost with regards to the true medicine of cannabis within the way in which cannabis is being marketed today, his view on what he calls psychedelic moments, and much, much more. So please, help me in welcoming my man, Travis Tacon, to the show. Travis, my brother, so good to have you here with me today.
Thank you very much. You are the intro champion. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it was so easy, because we both speak the same language, a lot of the same languages, actually, because like I said in there, it's like, I talk about this a lot with Connect with Cannabis as well. The thing I love most about it is that if someone resonates with the idea of connecting with cannabis as a spiritual aid and ally, it's probably not their first step on a self-awareness journey. They probably know about human design, astrology, Nikola Tesla, quantum physics, all these other amazing side quests that I love so much too. And so it was so fun getting to meet you because, as I'm sure we'll expand on, like I said in the intro, in order to really understand and be passionate about cultivating organically in a world where still a lot of people are not really aware of why that would matter, it takes a certain degree of dedication and commitment to your own journey, to yourself, and also to the world at large, right? To leave the Garden of Earth greener than when you found it. And so my first question for you, man, is like, tell me a little bit about your background with regards to psychedelics. How did you first get introduced to these medicines? And I include cannabis into this realm, right? So any way you want to take this show is like much more like cooking than baking. So just free flow it.
Sure. Well, considering cannabis as a psychedelic, my intro to that was probably not dissimilar. As a lot of folks, early adolescence, heard about it, had an older brother who sort of exposed me to it, but really with my group of friends, got a little piece of it and tried it and found everything about it to be welcoming. My relationship with it was established then and immediate. And it was fraught with turmoil throughout my youth. It's not the kind of thing that your parents could get behind back in the day. The stigma was what it was. And even anyway, if you're under 18 or 21, I guess, it's still not something that your folks could really support. And so there was a lot of conflict with that while I was experiencing what I now know to be spiritual development. Most of the experiences with cannabis that I had in my youth, we were always in the woods. And so immersed in nature and then opening up through this, mild psychedelic. And I think it also was helping me with social anxiety and what is now known as ADHD. I'm sure if they were given a chance, they would have diagnosed me with it. And so all of that was happening for me, but for my parents, it was kind of just like, you're too young to be getting high on pot. And that's all it ever was for them. So had to grow through all of that. And all the same, it really did help me get through high school and college, and came out of college working with it already, sort of a way to counteract the student loan debt, if you will. And went into sort of my New York City phase after that. I was involved in event production, and we would host all kinds of things from underground warehouse parties to running sound for weddings and bar bat mitzvahs, that kind of thing. But ultimately, wasn't living my best life. I knew at the time that this was not how I wanted to be in this sort of grinded out, hustle hard, come up lifestyle. This work hard, play hard thing is like popular in New York. I traveled a little bit, hit the West Coast, and met some cultivators and saw how people were living in this kind of connection. And at the same time, I was really interested in growing vegetables, and I was doing that at my family home just outside New York City. And we just had enough excess vegetables to donate to family shelters and that kind of thing. And I definitely saw an angle there where there could be restaurant production or some kind of connection with chefs. And so I knew that I wanted to merge these two passions and be able to cultivate cannabis, which was essentially what led me out west. A little ahead, a little behind the green rush, but a little ahead of legality coming to the East Coast like it is now. And so that was a pretty good snippet of how I came through cannabis, using it as essentially what I call a psychedelic teacher. I think that from psychedelics we get a learning. I call them psychedelic learnings. And so that really was just a pillar of support for me. And somewhere along the way there, I had connected with mushrooms as well. Psilocybin mushrooms, shrooms. My first experience was bizarre, was with a church group and a visit to the Bronx Zoo. And we were already the type of sort of rotten kids that were smoking herb on the way in kind of thing. But one older guy had some mushrooms. We all already was very interested in it. I think I had even read, I must have been 16 years old. I had already read into Carlos Castaneda and some of that stuff. And so I can't imagine, it's not necessarily appropriate. But yeah, we went to the Bronx Zoo at night. In the winter, they set up Christmas lights all over the Bronx Zoo. So arguably trippy already, in a good place for that kind of thing. And I just remember entering a building in which they had an elephant. So an elephant is inside a building already, so strange. And they also had, across from the elephant, they had this giant anteater. I mean, this thing's nose was just this extreme cone. And these kind of things were just like so impressionable to me. Like I could tell that I was seeing another side of things. Pretty right away, got into some bigger doses. And while on the one hand, I wouldn't encourage the youth to pursue that so fervently, for me, I did identify pretty right away that bringing questions into that kind of experience could give me tools to come out of it with. Things that you think about all the time that you just can't quite figure out, getting that perspective popped and seeing a whole nother angle on it. If you could retain that and come out of it with that, could really help you in your day-to-day life. So pretty right away, I saw it as more of a medicine than just something that we could do for fun. Yeah. And so now if you invited me to the zoo with mushrooms, I might say, no, I'll just sit at home with
you. That's so funny, man. I love asking that question. I ask most people, I'd say 95% of guests, that question first, because it allows context. For all of us, we grew up in the DARE generation. For most of us, I have on the show anywhere around, late 20s to late 30s, that area. It's like we grew up with DARE, we grew up with Just Say No. So I always love hearing how in an age where society was really bastardizing these things, and arguably they're still being bastardized, but in a different way now. But like when society was bastardizing these things, what allowed people to truly like pick their own answer and go against societal norms? Because, again, what I found is that there's no one necessarily that I could blame for this, even if I did think someone or some entity was to blame for it. But I think throughout many people having what they believe to be the best intentions, they try to influence your life, right? So we don't even need to go down conspiracy alley on this. Like, let's just say like our parents believe they're doing what's best for us, right? Our teachers believe they're doing what's best for us. Even the government believes it's doing what's best for us. But no one has the full picture, right? Of like truly what allows for a highly fulfilling life. And I think that only just recently have we as a society started to make this stuff more normal, with regards to like psychedelic medicines becoming popular right now in the world. They're not just becoming popular to like go get fucked up. They're becoming popular in the context of like, hey, psilocybin can help with the death process. Cannabis can help with a range of different medical issues, right? Like there are these things that are being spoken to that are much more than just like, hey, now there's drugs legal to go party with. Even in a party type atmosphere, I've had incredibly healing experiences in that type of atmosphere. So I'm not one to knock it or anything. And people that listen to the show know that I always take the middle way in everything. I don't think anything is right or wrong. I don't think there is good or bad. I don't think any of that, so long as it's what's truly right for you. And I know that for me, one of, if not the most powerful teachings that psychedelics, cannabis, everything that we're talking about has opened up for me is, why the hell am I truly here? And why did I choose to come down and incarnate at this particular time in the world? And I think that this is one of the biggest things that I love teaching, specifically with cannabis, because it's so practical. And of course, we can dive more into that. But for me, I think that we live in a world that has been so fast paced and unprioritized, if you will, for so long. It's been very left brain of, well, I need to have a secure job because that's what's going to allow me to buy a house. And I need to be able to buy a house because I need to keep up with the Joneses, and I need a new car every 2 years, and I need to get married by a certain age, and then have kids, and I need to put them in this certain type of school. But no one's really stopped to actually think and have space enough in their lives to go, is this actually what's fulfilling me? Not what so-and-so says will fulfill me, not what society says will make me happy. But if I ever stop to think about, is this truly what I want? And I think that psychedelics can be one of the greatest red pills ever to get us into a spot where we actually have the experience of creating space in our lives from which to actually ask these questions. And I'm curious for you, like, as someone who you were talking about was in the nightlife and everything like that, I imagine the answer is going to be yes. And I'm curious to hear what you say, but did you have that type of experience with cannabis, other psychedelics, et cetera, where you were able to like really ask yourself, like, what do I truly want in life? What really fulfills me? I'm curious what you'd say there. Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Yeah, and I think there's a coming of age aspect to this concept where at what point do we come out of childhood into a responsible development point where we can use this kind of thing to go forward with? So our parents only want what's best for us. And as far as their understanding is, you're going to have some limitations. So if something is just illegal, then across the board, it's going to be a no. Had my enthusiasm been for wine, they might have sent me to France or Italy to go study it, something like that. And now having kids of my own, I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, psychedelic experience is something that I want for them when the time is appropriate. And so I'm considering that, watching them grow and wondering, gosh, when are they going to hit that point where even if I was saying no, they would be doing it anyway? Because that's when you're exploring we get this sense of like, I know you only want what's best for me, but I think I might know what's best for me, or I might be able to discover that through exploration. And so I'm really hoping that once they get to that point, I'm not behind and I'm there to just support them and move them along through that. But back to your question about certain psychedelic experiences that may have stimulated that kind of thing for me. I've got two stories. One was when I realized that you had to be really careful about doing this psychedelic exploration. It was just a poorly timed moment. Some friends and I each took a full eighth of mushrooms in a mushroom tea, so it came on real quick. I had Mayan hieroglyphs on the wall. There was a door, if you know, wood grain can run when you're tripping, and so there was a full waterfall in the door. And I got a phone call from my brother that said, "Hey, I'm going to pick you up for hockey
Oh
practice."
God.
And I thought, oh no. I had completely spaced and forgotten and thought this was the kind of thing that you could just have fun with for an afternoon. And he was the kind of older brother that was going to stick it to me. And he made me go to this hockey practice, which was a running practice. You're not always on the ice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And my high school happened to have this incredibly long hallway that on rainy days, which it was, we would do the running practices in, and it was tiled pink. So we're in the pink hallway doing running practices. Bears mentioning that the coach of the hockey team was full on the school police
Oh
officer,
God.
like detective coach. And I'm just trying to be cool. My brother told all the older kids on the hockey team. I was a sophomore, he was a senior. And so they were messing with me. We're running down the hallway. They're like, Travis, 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 Travis.
Oh my God.
And so I knew I had made a mistake, but that I could get through it. And so I was able to focus on exercise in a way that I never had before. And I even remembered the coach saying, "There you go, Travis. Now that's a push-up." Because we were like, run to one end of the hallway, stop and do push-ups. Run to the other end of the hallway, do 10 jumping jacks and several sit-ups, you know, that kind of thing. Stepped out of that practice with just a newfound respect for psychedelics and a real realization of how they could be used to grow with. Because I knew I had learned a heavy lesson, but now I also knew that it was good for exercise, perhaps. And that was when I started taking smaller doses and realized that a gram, half a gram, even less can be particularly poignant in dealing with specific things, whether it's an important pondering that you need to go through or even some exercise, like a microdose is useful for.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing, man. You know, it's so cool too, because, you know, one of the other things that psychedelics have taught me is that so long as I maintain my breath and maintain my focus, I can get through some pretty challenging shit. You know, I've had some experiences where, again, being younger and not really knowing what you're messing with, not that young, but, you know, in my early 20s where, you know, LSD, for instance, at least with mushrooms, like, you know, you'll know if you're eating a lot. Like it's really hard. I mean, maybe these days people put them in gummies and whatnot, but you would know if you were eating a handful, like this is going to be a lot, right? With LSD, it's like drops, and those drops could be super dose, they could be double doses. Like you never really know, right?
And this is a classic tale.
Yeah, I think that every LSD story ever starts with, well, I took some and it was much more than I thought it was going to be. I've never heard anyone go, yeah, I took a dose of acid and it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. That's never happened once, you know? And so it's so interesting to think about these things, you know? And so like those experiences taught me though, like, hey, I actually have a lot of control over my experience, over how I choose to view what is happening, right? I have the choice to view it as happening to me, woe is me, the victim mentality, oh my goodness, or I can choose to believe it's happening for me. And what I realized was, you know, similar to you saying, like that then led over into my day-to-day life. You know, not every lesson that I was able to receive at those earlier ages of connecting with psychedelics was able to integrate, but some of them would just happen. And a lot of my curiosity began around like, how do I make sure that what I learn actually translates to my day-to-day life? And it took me years to understand integration and these kind of things in the way I do now. But it is fascinating how these medicines can teach you a lot about day-to-day life. I mean, I think that is like the ultimate lesson that they have to teach us is that, you know, you can learn a lot about yourself through how you go through a psychedelic experience, you know? And again, I'm not like I say in every episode, I'm not recommending anyone do this, but it is something that I found in my own life and it seems you have as well.
Right. I think I was really lucky to find it because, as you can imagine, when my brother pulled me out of that safe space where I was ready to dive deep, there was a lot of like victimization and kind of anger. But then once I got into that pink hallway setting and knew this was just a challenge I had to push through, I was really, really just lucky to find that I could use it as an asset to do so.
Mm.
And so then with subsequent macrodoses, I sort of knew that you could choose. You could pick a lane. And that may change to some extent as the dose goes higher, but I'm talking about the 3.5 classic full eighth of mushrooms or split an eighth with a buddy kind of thing. That is how most folks come to it, I believe. So subsequent macrodoses with a 3.5, identifying challenges as they came up, sort of knowing that there's a bit of a black hole that you can give the Heisman to. And knowing that it's there is better than not knowing that it's there. So with it there, you can hold it there and see what you get by just keeping yourself in a position of enjoying the experience. And I think as I developed, and it's just remarkable that I was lucky enough to be able to do this without any instruction or guidance in my youth. Take a little peek into the black hole. Say, oh, okay, I know that I can keep this black hole or bad trip, quotes, in the Heisman position and still be running with my ball. But what is really so dangerous about that if I can keep it there? So let's take a peek in there and see what comes out. And you might have a scary face, rear its head. But identifying that that's your black hole and that's a version of your own scary face, and then having the concept of the duality of man to marinate on afterwards and doing integration. I mean, it's just, I sort of feel like I lucked out and got through that phase safely, really just by pure luck. And now that there are all these developed techniques of how to approach it to begin with, how to deal with the darkness as it may come up, and how to integrate is just like so thrilling to me. Because really I had put it down after a time. I thought, okay, you know what? I think I've got everything that I need from this, and went through much of college without having any kind of psychedelic experiences, and forward into what I called my New York chapter. And like I said before, that was not my best time as a person. I mean, I was saving the savings. I was working hard. I was doing those things that seem like what you're supposed to do. Seeking a partner, looking to make a family eventually, that kind of thing. But I wasn't going about it in a way that was really spiritually informed. And that's okay. I think I had to go through that to sort of come back now to these, what I call psychedelic teachers, and reconnect with my psychedelic learning over the past several years.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because this is exactly what, I've really found is just a recurring theme in my own life, and also with all the clients I work with and everything, is that at a certain point, you start having awareness. This could be from a psychedelic experience. It can happen other ways too. I think in the modern day, one of the ways in which, probably because I'm in this line of work, but the way I hear it the most happening is with a psychedelic experience, where you almost get to have what could become a midlife crisis way before it actually becomes a crisis point, right? Where you realize like, whoa, actually, I don't want to be in school right now. I'm in the wrong major. I don't want to live where I'm currently living. I don't want to be with the partner I'm currently with. I am not showing up for myself. I'm not actually doing what I say I'm going to do. These kind of things where if we can catch them early on, right, and allow the right brain to take over a little bit and allow us to really have space enough to look at our lives, just objectively, we can hopefully nip that in the bud. The challenge is, and like you were saying, is that navigating the psychedelic terrain without any awareness around what could happen in there is like playing in a minefield, right? And that is exactly how I look at it very similar. Like, I am very grateful that I was able to somehow traverse some very challenging, deep experiences and come out really saying, wow, I got the lesson. Okay, it's all up to me. I'm going to take accountability over my life and just send it. And I think that this is the great thing about more of these, strategies, these techniques, these modalities, these, guides, facilitators, coaches, et cetera, coming into the space now, is that hopefully when people are looking to engage with these medicines, they have some strategies on hand and awareness of like, oh, I might see my own black hole. I might see my shadow. And you know what? It might be really challenging. And my heart rate might increase. And that's not necessarily going to mean I'm going to have a heart attack. And I might think it's really awkward to have a conversation with anyone. If I'm around people and I mess my words up, I might start really getting in my head about it. Having this type of context so that when those things happen, it's not like they're magically not uncomfortable, but at least you go, oh, this was one of the things that I thought might happen. And just to contextualize that can help a lot, I've found.
Right. And so fortunately, all of this is available now. And I think the youth, who I don't encourage to experiment the way that I did, but I'm sure they will anyway, will certainly have access to that. I think there was maybe one website like Arrowwood or something you could search for some information about basically drugs. But you were like scared to search that from your computer back then. And yeah, the reason that I say I navigated that time and I was lucky to get through it the way I did is because I had friends that didn't have that same experience. And we could come out of the thing and I could feel like, oh my gosh, I just gained so much. I think I'm going to be able to retain some of this and use it in my daily life. And have a friend right next to me, same dose, same setting, everything, and be like, oh, that was terrible. I'll never do that again. So I think a lot of that is going to be averted now that this material is more available.
Absolutely. It's so funny you mentioned that website. I remember Blue Light. Blue Light was another website like that where you'd have to use the acronym SWIM, right? Someone who isn't me. So SWIM says that if you eat 5 grams of mushrooms and put lemon in it, it'll be stronger and hit you faster, right? Because, everyone was convinced that some government agency was going to pick out individually people that were talking about psychedelic experiences, right? Like, obviously, they don't have the manpower to do that, nor do they really care, right? But, again, I think that whenever anything is demonized for so long and then gets popularized so quickly, there are some potential risks. And this is a lot of why I started the show, because I think that when you're hearing things like, cannabis can cure cancer, psilocybin can help with death process, it creates neurogenesis, LSD, everyone in Silicon Valley is using it. I think that those things are 100% can be accurate. And I think that the other side, though, is also equally important to state, which is like what we're talking about. Like, hey, if you don't know what you're messing with and you get into this, you can really freak yourself out and potentially traumatize yourself. I think that we need the full context.
Right. And so now we know that you don't have to just go and try and figure that out alone. Oh, you heard it could help with this. You heard it could help with that. No, you can delve deep into all of those things and really approach it correctly.
Absolutely.
So I'm super thankful to everybody who's bringing that kind of information
forward. 100%, man. And, I think this is a great time to dive into how you view cannabis because, as all my listeners know, obviously I do all my work with cannabis, right? And I love other psychedelics. I benefited from them. I still connect with them from time to time, but cannabis for some reason is just my ride or die. And I actually had a mushroom experience recently. I hadn't gone on one in about a year, one this big actually in 2 years, but I hadn't really connected with any mushrooms in about a year. And so I went into this. And of course, in the last 2 years, I've learned a lot about my own process, intention, all of this kind of stuff. So this is the first time I went into a psilocybin journey, like truly ritualistically with everything I had learned, building a temple space in my room, everything like this. And one of the things I found in that experience was I got to meet cannabis. And this has happened to me before, but I wasn't the same man then, right? Like I got to experience this now with much more awareness and much more ability to actually contextualize what I was meeting. Now, again, for anyone that's had this experience, it's not like it was an actual person, right? It's an energy that there was a knowing, oh, this is cannabis. And it was funny because what was shown to me was this dance that her and I have played many lifetimes before, where she was like, oh, you again, we have a very funny relationship, like in most lives, what happens is you get way too into me, you become obsessed. And then through a series of very fortunate events, you realize you need some space from me. And then you realize that it was never me that was the issue, it was you. And then you have this beautiful realization and then you teach from that perspective. And then we become a power couple. And it was just so much validation of like, wow, this is like a real thing for me. And so I'm curious for you, like, with cannabis, like, how do you view the plant in your own experience? Because as someone who's a natural farmer, as someone who's doing all the things that I do, I know that there's a spiritual component to how you view cannabis. You know, whether or not that's just it helps me connect to my family and my life around me, whether it helps me connect to laughter, right? It doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. It can be, but I'm curious how you would view and state your connection to the plant and your relationship with it.
Yeah, I think initially part of my attraction to it just as a substance, and mushrooms as well, is that they just grow from the ground. You cut it, you dry it, you consume it. That's it. I mean, you can make hash and other processes, but that's not part of it. Whereas even alcohol, even wine, there's a fermentation process. There's a bit of a chemistry set involved, and it becomes another thing. So the fact that it was a natural thing that really just came up from the ground, and then there it was, and you could use it. And initially, I used it to connect with my environment. I mean, I may have thought that it was just fun to ride your bike into the woods and go smoke some weed there. But now I know that interacting with cannabis when immersed in nature was deeply beneficial. So the real benefit was the connection that it gave. Just from washing away the adolescent haze and seeing that this may be the most important thing if you can find this peace in this place. Being immersed in nature just helps with that, but you don't have to be. Just the way you can find that connection without being on cannabis or using a substance. But I think one of the best things about cannabis is that it's like practice. It can strengthen our ability to establish and maintain that connection when we don't have the substance. And so practicing with cannabis in a conscious way, rather than just using it for fun, which is fine, especially if that's what you know what you're doing, like we spoke about before. If you know that you just want to connect with it to just have some fun and relax, then that's okay. But mindfully connecting with it to work on this connection it's like a spotter helping you lift, essentially. So the same muscles and mechanisms are essentially like the emotional, mental connectivity that cannabis exercises are the same ones that we use for meditation and for deep meditation. So primarily, I view cannabis as a meditative tool. And then come all the specifics. So if you need it to combat depression or anxiety or appetite or to increase appetite or insomnia, all those specifics come after you have used it to meditate with, and then it can be directed to help with those specific ailments.
That makes perfect sense. You know, how I describe the plant is in my opinion, one of, if not my favorite, personally for me, my favorite self-awareness tool that I've ever found. And I love the spotter analogy because this is how I think of it, right? Let's say that you are dedicated to illuminating self-awareness. And in the gym analogy, you're dedicated to being able to, bench press more weight, right? For whatever reason, right? Maybe you're going out for the
strength.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you're going out for the chess team or something, right? And you're just like, I'm going to get an insane amount of weight on this bar and do it, right? Well, you can't just go from never bench pressing to putting 400 pounds on the bar, right? There's a stepping stone process, right? So the same way that you can't go from a life in which you're starting to have awareness that like, oh, maybe I'm not in the right relationship. Maybe I'm not in the right place. Maybe I'm not doing what fulfills me, right? Like you can't go from that spot to just like, all right, I'm going to like quit my whole life and do everything, right? Could it happen? Sure, but it's not very common. The same way that you might get someone who's never lifted weight that just has the build that can put a lot of weight in the bar, but it's very rare. And so we'll speak to not the outlying experiences, but more of like the generalization experiences I found it. So if you're starting to get awareness, now again, we live in a society, especially in the Western world, where we are rewarded for our productivity, our ability to get shit done. And what society states is being a good boy or good girl, right? Paying your taxes, these kind of things, right? So I wanted to state that because it's not exactly easy for most of us to just give all that up overnight, right? Again, we hear stories about Ram Dass and people like that, but that's not the norm. Let's say that you want to increase connection in your life, right? Because a lot of people ask me, well, if you've learned how to connect to yourself, why do you still use cannabis? And I'm like, well, because connection is not a point A to point B thing. Life is not that simple. It's very complicated in a lot of ways, right? It's much more complex than that is the word I wanted to use. So, right, like I might learn how to connect to a certain portion of myself better. And that lesson now I'm able to figure out. But let's say that a week later, I go on a big podcast and oh my God, and I got tons of calls again, right? What's probably going to happen is then my mind, those programs that were very integrated for years of not giving myself space, being busy, etc., are now going to have a whole new list of really plausible excuses as to why I can't have that space in my life. So now maybe that lesson that I learned gets unintegrated to a certain degree because I'm now back in my normal level of consciousness. So in that respect, I might need to go back and revisit that same lesson. The same way that on the bench press, you might get 225, get an injury, and now you got to learn how to get to 225 again. You can't just go right to 225 and go upwards again. So at the same time, though, let's say that I integrate that part, right? I actually have space in my life now. And from that space, I'm starting to see some positive change in my life. Then I start realizing, I don't know if I'm in the right relationship, let's just say, right? Well, that might be a whole new level that I don't feel confident in how to connect myself to truly get that answer. I might be really good at giving myself space and meditating, playing guitar, just staring at the ceiling, doing whatever allows me to feel happy in myself. But I might not be okay with connecting with those parts of myself that are telling me certain things that I don't want to hear yet. And so now I might need to connect with the plant again, or I might benefit rather, because I don't think there's ever a need. I might benefit from being able to connect with that plant and see what that part of me is saying. Now, when I come back, it's up to me to obviously do the work to either have that conversation in the relationship or leave if I know that's the answer, whatever the answer is for me. That's still up to me. The same way that, let's say you have a spotter that helps you, or a coach, let's say that helps you get to 225. Well, now you might want 250, 275, 300. You might need to hire that coach again or a different coach altogether, right? To help you continue up leveling. And so, like I tell everyone, it's not that anyone needs cannabis. No one needs cannabis to access these things. But we also live in a world where we don't really have the luxury of going, hey, you know what, guys, I'm going to go to that mountaintop for 20 years and just someone else pay my bills, take care of my family. I'll figure it out, right? We don't really have that luxury. And so because of that, time is the most valuable resource. We could either spend a long time and a lot of costly mistakes trying to figure this stuff out, or we could, because again, a lot of times when we're starting to create a goal, right? Like let's say we want to make more money, let's say in a year, right? Well, we might not really know what having more money feels like. And so on those mornings where we tell ourselves to get up at 5 a.m. and we haven't yet got that money that we've wanted, it might be hard for us to be like, why am I even doing this?
What's the feeling I'm at even after?
Exactly. So if we can connect with something that allows us to experience that feeling of like, oh my God, I feel financially free in this analogy, right? I feel like I could do anything with my life, right? Now, if you understand how to do the work on the other side of it, you might now know and be motivated by what that feeling is and know it matters to you, And so that's what I think about when I think about like why someone could experience using cannabis as a spiritual aid and ally. Same reason you have a coach, teacher, anything.
Right. So it's like getting reps. We all know it wouldn't be safe to pursue lifting that weight without a spotter. And another great analogy is swinging the heavy bat in the dugout. Put a little weight on that bat, swing it, get used to it, step out, and then it's easier to do. And so that correlates to this awareness. Once you have established the sense of this awareness that cannabis can help provide, the perspective pop, if you will, you're better able to bring that into your daily life. And so really, I think the question, if someone asks you the question, oh, you seem to have it figured out these things, why you still connect with cannabis, really the question is the frequency of use. Well, how often do you go to that gym then? Or what are the exercises you do when you're in that gym, which is as different from just smoking to smoke or interacting with cannabis with some intention and a question, perhaps, something like that. So yeah, I think it is really the greatest tool for awareness that's so available to humanity.
Definitely. Because let's face it, right? Like not everyone can afford to have a coach. Not everyone can afford to have a therapist, right? And by all means, these things can drastically help your relationship to the plant, right? But at the same time, they're not necessary. And for a lot of people, especially with these new things that are coming out now. A lot of the information I put out around cannabis, other people put out about psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, etc. Someone might be able to have that experience where they go, oh shit, okay, I get this now. And then they're able to start taking on new programs and patterns that are going to serve them in their lives, right? Now, again, the challenge is that cannabis, other plant medicines, etc., are not going to solve your problems for you. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused. Even if you're unconsciously using the plant and you think that the plant might be solving your issue. Like for me, I used to come home at the end of the day, be unfulfilled by the work I did, smoke weed, and all would be good in the world. Would it really, though? Because I would also need to get
Would it really? No, unknowingly you could be causing problems for yourself rather than solving them.
Exactly. I would need to use it again the same day for the same issue. So was it really solving anything? No, because it's not meant to solve anything. It's meant to give you the awareness to figure out your own issues and to be able to solve them. But if your unconscious intention is, I don't want to see things, right? Because you're getting home at the end of the night, thank God, let me forget about this day. Okay, abracadabra, you will forget about your day. But the next day where the same issue happens and you go home and go, I want to forget about my day. Eventually what happened to me is I woke up and go, holy shit, I don't want to forget all of my life. And then what I learned was it was never the plant's fault, right? Like the plant will help you with whatever you want help with. The challenge is that if you're not making a conscious intention, then it's not that you're not making an intention. The intention becomes whatever is in your unconscious, And so again, part of being conscious is understanding how to make an intention and how to allow that to transpire in your experience.
Exactly. It's the difference between saying, okay, I want to interact with cannabis just to relieve some anxiety in a numb out sort of way, or I want to interact with cannabis to journey to the source of this anxiety and really deal with it. And which is to say, it's okay if you're aware of the fact that you don't really want to delve deep into the source of this anxiety right now. It's Monday or Tuesday and you got, some things to do, but you do want relief from that anxiety. And you know that you can get at least a temporary break from the pressures that you're feeling. And then by all means, consciously use it in that way. But the real spice of life, so to speak, is ironing that anxiety out entirely. And you can use cannabis to do so with this more specifically designed intention, which is essentially your work. I'm referring to people to constantly.
Well, Travis, it's so funny. The analogy that just came to me is like, let's say you get a cut on your hand at work and all you got there is duct tape. Well, at the time, duct tape is what's going to be what stops the bleeding.
Slap it on there. Stop.
Exactly. But do you think that when you get home, you might want to put some Neosporin or whatever organic version? I don't know. I don't use that stuff. But like you want to put some Neosporin and a real Band-Aid on there. And then maybe go to the doctor to figure out like, hey, I might need stitches here. Right. But at the time that it's happening, sometimes if you're conscious with it, you go, okay, right now, fucking, I know duct tape is not exactly the best thing to be in an open wound, but I'm either going to bleed out or I'm going to put this on there. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure I don't bleed out and die. Then I'll figure out how to optimize the situation. And I think that that's the challenge is that for me, for a long time, I just kept putting duct tape on this open wound and being like, oh, I must need more duct tape. Oh, I must need more duct tape. And I never stopped to actually ask myself, why the hell is my cut not healing? Oh, probably because I keep putting duct tape on it. And do you want to go through your whole life with a bunch of micro cuts and duct tape all over you? Or do you eventually want to give yourself the space? And if you have the money, work with a coach, et cetera, blah, 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 to be able to actually go, okay, how do I metaphorically create a Band-Aid and allow this cut to truly heal?
This is just a perfect analogy because under the duct tape, the cut will not heal.
Yeah.
In fact, it'll almost certainly get some toxicity and become an infection and be exacerbated and much worse. And you really don't want the duct tape in that case to be cannabis because it can sort of like pervert your relationship with it. We know at this point she does not like to be abused in that way.
Yeah, she's spicy, and that's what the funniest part of when I've met the spirit of cannabis is like, oh man, she's a sassy, spicy, just like hilarious. I mean, that's where you realize like why so much laughter is attributed to that medicine. I mean, a lot of psychedelics have this associated with it, but she can remind you very similar to the feminine, right? Of like how silly sometimes, our masculine view of the world gets. And I don't mean masculine in the terms of men only have this. Men and women can both do it, right? We're busy, we're go, go, go. We're prioritizing working 14-hour days. We're not seeing our kids, blah, blah, blah. And then we have this experience where we're like, holy fuck, dude, life can be so much simpler. How did I miss this? And it's like a cosmic giggle, right? Because you're like, oh my God, like, thank goodness I had this experience. And again, it doesn't need to be with psychedelics, right? But for most people in the world, they don't have the space to go take 2 weeks off and really be with themselves to reach that conclusion, you know? And so,
right. And that's another good answer to the question, why you still interact with cannabis. If you already got this information, you say, well, I don't want to miss anything.
yeah,
I want to make sure, I want to keep checking back with my doctor and make sure that, you know, nothing goes unnoticed.
yeah. And I'm also not naive enough to think it'd be very egotistical of me to think, oh, I've transcended the 3D world. You know, I'm no longer influenced. I have no ability to fall into those spells again, right? Like that would be extremely naive if someone thought that. You know, unless you're like an ascended master, which is much rarer than Instagram would want you to believe. You know, again, unless
Yes.
you're an ascended master, like a true ascended master, you haven't transcended that. And so to be able to every once in a while have that pattern interrupt to go, well, I think I'm in the right direction. I think that I have my priorities correct. I think that I'm, truly understanding myself. But let me go dive into the subconscious, because that's truly what's happening when you're connecting with cannabis. You're going from beta brainwaves into alpha and theta, opening up the subconscious. Let me go test my theory and see if it holds up in a court of law. And so I think that's another, way in which I think about why I connect with this medicine. Also, I'm not afraid to admit that I enjoy it. Like from time to time, I enjoy connecting with the plant. There's a lot about the plant that I truly enjoy. Like at one point, it was completely based on numbing out. I'm a grower. I'm someone who does not connect with cannabis every day. I'm someone who, and again, none of these things are the right or wrong way. This is just how I've come to this conclusion. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. But, I
Right.
love, even like, I haven't connected with cannabis in almost a month now, but I love if Rachel's, interacting with the volcano, she'll be like, hey, can you make me a bag? I'm like, hell yeah. And I grind up the flower and I smell it and I pack the bowl. I love the ritual of it. I love so much about cannabis, and again, not everyone is going to resonate with the medicine, but for me, there's so much more like just cultivating. I mean, you can speak to this. Like I get so naturally high when I go hang out with my plants, when I go water them and care for them and prune them and talk to them. And I get to have beautiful experiences in there, And so, for me, it's like I truly enjoy what cannabis represents to me. It's the same way as if, let's say, like, for instance, my father passed away 7 years ago, right? But I can still smile when I think about him because I can feel him around me. And so cannabis is very similar. Like I enjoy and can understand what the plant would give me in terms of advice, what the energy would be if I was connecting with cannabis right now, how would I perceive this situation I'm in? How would I think about it? And from time to time, I enjoy connecting with the plant and meeting those parts of me that maybe once again, I've been too busy to have the time to go connect with, right? Like, again, I think what hopefully helps me be relatable is that I'm human. I fall into these things too, right? But cannabis is that thing that can allow me to make sure that I'm making my priorities accurate to who and what I truly am and who and what I truly want to become as well.
Right. And I'm the same way in a lot of ways, in a sense, because I grow outside over the summer season. As we get towards the end of that and the plants are ripening, there's sort of this stall where I don't feel a great desire to interact with cannabis, because the best freshest is yet to come. There's no way anything that I have access to is going to be as good as what's on the branch right now. So it's almost like worth it just to wait. But then my consumption always upticks to a considerable increase, October, November, December. All these different herbs that I sort of need to get through as the cultivator and purveyor of them to really know them if I'm going to be providing them. And so I always have taken a tolerance break in January. We call it Sober January, and consume no mood or mind altering substances for the entire month. And so I've been on that annual cycle for quite some time and always derived like extreme benefit from it. It's like a macro dose, I guess, a macro dose of sobriety, if you will. But really what matters is not that you're using it or not using it. It's that there was a change. You didn't just use it or just not use it. that's where the benefit comes from. So some of the greatest benefit of taking that month off is coming back into it, when this spark of inspiration can come from a very, very little bit. And so actually having become acquainted with your work about last December and through January, I've come out of this year's Sober January with a little bit more of a tiptoe to it. And doing the dieta or the dieta lifestyle, I've found has an extreme benefit. Like I can bring the benefit of, Sober January and smoking in February. I can have that a little version of that every week by just taking 3 days off or 5 days off, and those will depend on other things that I have to focus on. Structuring that around what I need to do, what I want to do, and also the goal of reconnecting with it and having it be more impactful.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. It's what I found is that it's truly in the absence of anything that we can discover what it really means to us and what it really does for us, and this works the same with people in our lives, right? Like if we're around the same person every single day, especially like a romantic partner, and they make our food for us the same way every day, we wake up in the same side of the bed every day with them, we give them the same good morning kiss every day, we go through the same rituals, and then let's say they leave for a month on an epic retreat or something. Well, those first couple of days might seem like, oh, great, I get the whole bed to myself, et cetera. But after about day 5,
right.
You're going to start realizing like, wow, I never truly realized how many little things I was depending on them for, and how much like they really matter in my life, and how much I took advantage potentially of all the things they did for me. And cannabis is very similar. Again, how we do anything is how we do everything. So I tell people, if you don't really know who you are sober, then you don't really know who you are altered. You don't really know what these plants do for you. And also at the same time, like, if you're always connecting with psychedelics, arguably you don't really know who you are. The same way that if you're only sober all the time, I'm not going to say that you don't know who you are, but it's all more likely that if you're, again, not a monk or not like an ascended master, that you are falling victim to society's expectations of you and these kind of things, right? So for me, like everything, I go from Taoism, right? The middle way is the way. How can I healthily connect with these things with intention for the basis of understanding who I am to a deeper level? So then I can make wiser choices in my life to be around the people, places, and things that are in alignment with who and what I truly am and who I want to be in the world. So that by the time that my life does flash before my eyes, I can go, wow, I fucking aced it, And at the end of the day,
right.
like, I'm not going to know that objectively, like, oh, I'm acing it right now, because it's not a left brain thing, but it's all based on feeling. And another thing that cannabis has done for me incredibly well is get me reoriented into my feelings, into my intuition, into my body. And those things for me have been extremely beneficial. And I think, Travis, like, one of the points I've gotten to in life, which I'm sure you're at too, is I know that certain people will not understand this. I know for certain people, they'll just exponent it out as, oh, you're a druggie. Oh, you're just getting high. Cool story, man. I don't give a fuck if anyone agrees with me. I don't give a fuck if anyone understands me, because at the end of the day, that's what true self-realization looks like, is working with the plants, teachers, etc., that you need to work with so that you truly understand yourself to a level where you become unfuckwittable, where it doesn't matter what people who don't know you, right? I'm talking about people who don't know me are saying about me, because they don't know me. Why would I expect them to, right? So why would I take their advice? If a coach that has known me for 2 years starts saying, hey, I think you're missing something, I'm going to take that into consideration, right? But for most people, I know, not most people, but I'll say a lot of people, especially on Instagram, I know that when trolls start commenting, I just get excited, because at the end of the day, I'm like, that means that I'm doing what's right, in the sense that if I was trying to be agreeable or trying to make my message for everyone, I would be boiling and watering it down. And at the end of the day, to know that there are people that vehemently disagree with me tells me that I'm in alignment with what is true to me, because arguably no truth is going to be for everyone. And if someone's trying to do that, it means that something inside of them is not fully comfortable with having people not agree with them. And that's what I found, because I used to do that. So yeah, it's interesting.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that unfortunate viewpoint is increasingly marginalized geographic as legalization spreads. And soon enough, there'll be less and less room for that and more understanding. And that's really why I love the legality of hemp so much. The fact that we can grow hemp and sell it in all 50 states, or you can grow it in all 50 states, is miraculous. And I'm not talking, by the way, about the CBD you see in the gas station or the grocery store. That all comes from giant tractor fields of hemp that's probably mechanically planted, mechanically harvested. It goes to big extraction mills where they just get it down into a really distilled substance that is the ingredient in your gas station CBD. No, I'm talking about high quality hemp that's produced in the same way as you would grow any cannabis. And there's a margin of THC that's allowed. It's up to 0.3. So anything under that, hemp that contains THC under that, is essentially a microdose of your regular cannabis. And so I think it's gonna be a tool for people to continue to understand that. I've heard people say, "Oh, I love hemp because it doesn't get me high; it just gets me relaxed." And I go, "Okay, whatever, however you want to describe it." But we also grow some hemp that has zero THC, none whatsoever. It's rich in CBG and CBN. And so even if people can use that tool as a known analgesic for relief from pain and other ailments, then I feel like they'll continue to open up to the possibility that cannabis is more than just, like you said, people call you a drug or a druggie or that kind of thing. And I love a troll. Yeah. I love a good trolling. It's sort of an opportunity. You can see if you could respond in a way that has no hostility, but just information, and just see it's like extending your hand and saying, if you come with me if you want, but leave it if you don't. And of course, if you identify, which you'll know right away, if it's a brick wall, don't bang your head against it.
Yes.
But if you're at the forest's edge and somebody wants to be let in, then I can be your guide.
Yes. Dude, I'm so glad you mentioned that because, I've had some great conversations with people who started out as trolls and they're like, "Oh, actually, I just didn't get what you did." And now they're supporters, and again, I never care if anyone agrees with me. We can have a great discussion on why their viewpoint might be right. Mine's wrong. Mine's right. Theirs wrong, whatever, at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong. So I never want anyone to take on my view of life just blatantly because of what I say. I want people to challenge it. I want them to have their own experiences, find their own ways to speak about it. And I think at the end of the day, like you were saying, when I can hear what a troll says and just respond with love, first of all, it allows me to realize like, oh shit, no, I truly believe this for myself. Because if I feel like I have to argue my point on anything, it means that there's something inside of me that doesn't fully believe what I'm saying, and
right. Who are you convincing? Right.
Exactly. And to the degree that I can be calm and just say, hey, it looks like I'm not the right person for you. No hard feelings, but wishing you well in your journey. At the end of the day, like I know my message isn't for everyone. I would never want it to be, So Travis, this has been absolutely amazing. I can't believe we already went through an hour. This is unbelievable. We're going to have to do part 2, part 3, etc.
Ripped through an hour. Dude, oh my gosh.
I mean, it's effortless, man. This is why I love chatting, especially with you and individuals that, cultivating these things, because we just see eye to eye on so many different things, or maybe see high to high. That might be a good pun for that, but man, I want to make sure that I tell people, or that I give you opportunity to tell people where they can find you, purchase your products. I'm going to put it all in the show notes, but I'd love if I could hear it right from you first. So where can people find you, connect with you, etc.?
Yeah, Titan.farm on Instagram is the main base. We've got a backup for that too, just because Instagram can be harsh. And so the Titan Farm on Instagram has more of like a homestead approach. You can follow both and get like the complete picture. www.kmcrc is .org is where you can connect with the Klickitat Medical Cannabis Resource Center. There's a contact form on there. Titanfarm.shop is almost open. Matter of days here, the website's going to launch and our hemp products will be up there. Very excited to offer those. Titanfarm.shop.
Dude, I love that, man. I'm excited to try out your products because I know based on how you cultivate and who you are energetically, it's going to be some extremely high quality stuff. And I am always looking for new stuff.
Yeah. And so more on that next time. We'll get into cultivation, everything from, biodynamics to just intention.
Beautiful, dude. I'm excited. And guys, trust me when I say that episode is going to be absolutely amazing. Travis, I have a last question for you, man. And that question is this. Let's say that someone listens to this episode and they're extremely excited to explore psychedelic medicines in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would suggest to them to allow them to use the proper discernment in choosing whether or not psychedelics are right for them at this point in their lives?
So, obviously not encouraging anyone one way or another, but if you do decide to experiment with psychedelics, my best advice is to lean in. Dive into that experience. Don't have any trepidation about it. You're going to be okay in a matter of hours, no matter what the dose is. You'll be right back to normal, I promise. And so lean in, dig deep, see what's in there, and see what you can get from it, because it has things for you.
Oh, I love that. Wow, guys. I knew this episode was going to dive deep, yet I am consistently surprised at how much fun I have and how much I learn in being able to engage in these stimulating conversations on the show. And my hope is that, as with every episode, each of you can walk away with an actionable piece of knowledge and or awareness that you can apply to your life right now to gain a higher quality of life. For anyone looking to contact Travis, purchase products from Titan Farm, and stay up to date on all of the amazing things he is creating in the world, make sure to check out the show notes for this episode, where you can find all of that info and a special offer for a whopping 20% off of his products on Titan Farm. Travis, thank you so much once again for taking the time to riff with me on the show today, for doing the work you are doing to spread knowledge and education surrounding cannabis and regenerative agriculture as a whole, and for charging the absolute hell out of my battery in today's conversation. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.
Much love, sir. Battery full. Let's get about the day.